part 2. Hopefully this will go a little bit quicker. Have our pink meat ready to go. We are going to make what's called smoked pepper jerky. One of the most common kinds of jerky in a grocery store. Original, whatever that is. Teriyaki and smoked pepper. We're going to go with smoked pepper. First ingredient, 1 bottle dark beer. Shiner Bock. Not the national beer of Texas. That's Lone Star beer. But a close second. One of my personal favorites. You want a dark beer. I highly recommend Shiner. I'm not being paid by Shiner. I wish. But it's what I use. And it's excellent. But you want a dark beer. So. And remember, we have this recipe is for about 2 pounds of meat. So you would obviously need to mix it up if you had a different amount. So we have our 1 bottle of dark beer in there. I know that seems strange, but remember there are a lot of great things that are cooked with and marinated with beer. I have already pre-poured 1 cup of soy sauce going in there. If you're going to make jerky, you are going to spend a lot of time around soy sauce and Worcestershire sauce. The soy sauce I use is the lowest possible sodium content. Salt is your enemy. It will always mess up your jerky. You want to keep your salt as low as possible. I use the so-called all-natural soy sauce. It has some sodium, but it's very low. Shoot for low, or you will have jerky that tastes like salt. Then we have 1/4 cup Worcestershire. There's some argument that Worcestershire and soy sauce are somewhat interchangeable when it comes to jerky. They're usually going to be necessary ingredients. There's a whole lot of flavor development from both of them, and they assist in binding to a degree. What really assists in binding, and what I mean by binding, is your meat taking in that flavor that you're creating, is brown sugar. And I know there is just this huge revolution in both jerky in the world that sugar is the absolute devil, and that there's the kick for all natural jerky. That go nuts. Go nuts with the all natural stuff. Unfortunately, it's going to taste all natural. I'm not putting this sugar in like Jack Link's is in order to get a bunch more weight. I'm putting this in because brown sugar is a binder. It's going to make sure my flavor sticks to my meat. 3 tablespoons. All we need. 3 tablespoons in a giant C. It's not really that much sugar. It's not going to taste sugary. I assure you, it's going to taste like pepper. But I put this sugar in, as the recipe calls for, because I need the pepper and the rest of the ingredients to bind into the meat. The next part of the recipe is 1 tablespoon of Morton Tender Quick. You can buy Morton Tender Quick in most grocery stores with the salt in the spice section. That is commonly referred to as the cure. That is what, on top of the lack of fat and moisture, not having a breeding ground for bacteria, the cure extends the shelf life of jerky by like 6 months. I'm not going to put the cure in this batch because this batch is just for me, and I'm going to eat it in like a week. I don't need the cure. If you're going to eat the jerky in a week or 2, you don't need the damn cure. I don't care what anyone says. Now, if you're going to be selling it, you need the cure. If you're going to be keeping it for a long time, you need the cure. You need to put the least amount of cure possible. The cure is like salt on steroids. Imagine like Putin developing a nuclear salt bomb and dropping it in jerky. That's what the cure is. I have had jerky where I put too much cure in it, and it will overcome habaneros. It will overcome pepper. It will overcome anything, and it will taste like disgusting salt. So, 1 tablespoon for me, that's his max, and I would probably have done less than that, to be honest. That stuff is powerful. But again, this is for me, and I'm gonna eat it over the next 2 weeks, and I'm not sticking the cure in it. The cure is an overstated necessity from a lot of neurotic folks. Now, if you're going to be selling your jerky, it's completely irresponsible not to use the cure. You need to use the cure because you don't know how long your customers are going to keep their jerky, and so therefore you definitely need to use the cure. Or if you personally are going to keep the jerky and you want it to sit around for 3 or 4 months, then yeah, you need to use the cure. But if you're like, man, this is for the next 2 weeks, my snacks at work, don't use the cure. The next bit is a half teaspoon of garlic salt. I've found that most jerky recipes call for some kind of garlic or garlic salt. Always helps with the flavor. There we go. If you're buying my smoked pepper from me, this is not that recipe. This is a different recipe. But this is a good recipe. You'll enjoy it. And then really all we have left is pepper, the active ingredient. Most jerky has what I would call an active ingredient. My raspberry and chipotle. My spicy habanero, the habanero pepper. Now there's like 11 other ingredients that go in, but there's that one main flavorful ingredient that you're using the rest to either enhance or bind. And so this is going to be 4 to 6 tablespoons of black pepper. And yes, that's a lot of black pepper. But remember, it's a marinade. You're not pouring it on dry meat. It's going to float around in there. Actually, we can just really finish that off. It's going to float around in there and absorb. It is not going to just be like a piece of meat that you have just doused in pepper. And so obviously you got to stir your marinade up. And I'll tell you this, especially in my opinion, with any kind of pepper jerky, the marinade does not smell good. No. This marinade, sniffing my nose in it, and I have a really damaged sense of smell, and I can smell it. I mean, all that pepper, that's too much for smell. I promise you, it'll taste great. Certain ones like Korean barbecue, especially raspberry chipotle, you stick your nose in the marinade and you're like, oh, I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven. I can't imagine how good this is going to taste. This, if I were to stick my nose in it and I could smell like at full capacity, I would probably be like hard pass. But, if you've cooked anything in life, you know that the process ain't always pretty. The process doesn't always smell good. But I promise you, this marinade it's gonna make you a really good pepper jerky. And really, at the end of the day, we put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ingredients. And this is the 2 pounds that I had trimmed in the previous episode. As you can notice that my clothing hasn't changed. I do shower and change my clothes occasionally. That's it. And what you're going to do now is you're going to wrap it in tinfoil or seal it in a plastic bag. If you seal it in a plastic bag, get as much oxygen out as you can. I just leave it in the bowl and I seal it in with foil or saran wrap, and you're going to stick it in the fridge. Do not leave your marinade out of the fridge. If you were to just cut up these pieces of bottom round and leave them in the fridge in a bowl for the next 2 or 3 days, they would go bad. But one of the beauties of jerky marinades is there's so much natural acids, bases, other chemicals, that act as a preserving agent. So the age-old question is, how long do I marinate? And the question is, how good do you want your jerky to be? the average answer is 24 hours. And that tends to be the minimum. If you try the 30-minute marinade, you will not have any flavor on that jerky. Do not waste your time. I promise you, do not do the 30-minute marinade. Minimum 24 hours. Minimum. To bind into every fiber of that meat, the flavor. And remember, during the process of dehydration, it's being ripped out. That flavor is being ripped out. You need it in there deep. So you need minimum 24 hours. I do 72. I want my jerky as flavorful as possible. It's perfectly safe in a highly refrigerated, sealed container content in a refrigerator for 72 hours. It requires a lot of patience. But I think that the people that eat my jerky would say it yields the results. So it's a question of how much are you willing to wait. For this, even for my personal consumption of some pepper jerky, and this is a very good pepper recipe. I'm not huge on pepper jerky personally, and this is not my recipe, which, being a little arrogant, I think my recipe is better. Even with this, which I'm not like crazy excited about, 72 hours for sure. And so in 72 hours, hopefully you'll see me in different clothes. Call the police if you don't. I've gone crazy. And then we're going to pull it out of the fridge, and we're going to get to the dehydration process. You do want to make sure, I can't really show you that well, but you do want to make sure every piece is submerged and your jerky is really mixed in well in the marinade. You don't want pieces sticking out, or only getting sort of half the flavor. Like, for example, let's say I looked at this and saw that there was too much jerky sticking out. I might add a little bit more Worcestershire, since we had more soy sauce than Worcestershire, maybe a little more beer, probably more Worcestershire, and just make sure everything's submerged. There's a school of thought that says you should stir your marinade every so often. As long as everything is fully submerged, in my opinion, you don't need to do that. What I'm going to do, this is fully submerged. The marinade's very well mixed. I'm going to wrap tinfoil around it. I'm going to stick it in the back of my refrigerator, and in 72 hours, I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to start cooking it. And I'll see you then. In the interim, stay safe. These are weird times.